Hi everyone, my name is Kaylee Fredericks, and today I'll be talking about the link between our daily sodium intake and hypertension. Salt. It's in chips, it's in soups, and it's even in sweets. It has 0 calories and it's essential. We need it for many things like transmitting nerve signals, muscle movement, and keeping fluids balanced. Seems pretty great, right? And it is, but like any good thing, too much becomes dangerous. And too much of this tiny crystal can have a massive impact on your heart. Hypertension, or high blood pressure, affects nearly 50 million people just in the US alone. And guess what? Sodium is one of its biggest triggers. This is a condition where the force of blood pushing against the artery walls is consistently too high. Hypertension actually earned the name of silent killer because it initially shows no symptoms. Well, that is until it's too late. So, how can something so important to consume daily actually end up hurting you? Well, besides from all of its functions in the body, salt happens to be pretty tasty, causing us to overconsume it. So we have blood vessels that run through our whole body and they play a pretty important role, pumping blood through our arteries, supplying all of our other organs and tissues of the body with oxygen and nutrients. Because of a process called osmosis, water will tend to move from areas of low solute concentration to areas of high solute concentration. On the left of this image, the glass has an equal amount of fluid on both sides, but there's more salt on the right side. To correct this, the water rushes into the right side of the glass to dilute the higher salt concentration. Now, in the second image, you can see the salt is equally distributed throughout the water. Now, why is this an issue? Well, this process also takes place in these little tubes in our bodies called arteries. When you eat too much salt, your body holds on to water in these arteries, and that extra water makes your blood push harder through those arteries. Picture it like turning the water faucet all the way up. The pressure builds. So, why does this even matter? Well, the heart is a muscle and it works pretty dang hard to pump blood. And that extra pressure in your arteries causes your heart to work even harder. Like any muscle, the heart can get tired. And then we've got a pretty huge problem because if the blood supply to the brain is disrupted, the brain is deprived of oxygen and a stroke occurs. And when the blood flow to the heart is disrupted, a heart attack will occur. So, how can we prevent this from happening? Good thing someone invented this thing called the DASH diet, which just stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Now let's see if this approach actually works. A randomized control study by the New England Journal of Medicine tested how reducing dietary sodium and following the DASH diet affects blood pressure. The DASH diet emphasizes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean protein while limiting sodium, saturated fat, and added sugars. Researchers gave 412 adults either a typical American diet or the DASH diet, and within those diets, they ate high, medium, or low levels of sodium for 30 days each. The key findings were that reducing sodium lowered blood pressure at every level, especially in people with hypertension. The DASH diet lowered blood pressure even without additionally reducing sodium. And combining low sodium and the DASH diet gave the biggest drop in blood pressure, up to 11.5 millimeters of mercury in people with hypertension, which is similar to the effect of taking medication. And these benefits were seen all across races, sexes, and in people with or without high blood pressure. And the bottom line is that the combination of these two strategies produces the best outcome. Okay, great. So we've seen how sodium can contribute to a diet on the larger scale, but what if we zoomed in a little bit? In a fascinating cellular study conducted by the Journal of Endocrinology, male Worcester rats were fed either a high sodium or low sodium diet, and their heart tissue was later extracted for analysis. What they found was that the low sodium diet reduced harmful receptors in the heart that normally tighten your blood vessels. These key heart receptors are called angiotensin type 1 and mineralocorticoid, and they help your body to conserve salt and raise blood pressure when needed. Which is great, but when sodium is already high, they can go into overdrive and contribute to hypertension and heart damage. Therefore, less of these receptors equals less pressure in your heart. The low sodium diet also reduced activity in stress-related proteins like ERK and improved blood vessel function by boosting the ratio of activated eNOS, which is just an enzyme that helps vessels relax. Ultimately, there are a whole lot of receptors, proteins, and hormones that contribute to your intercellular processes, and this study just shows a correlation between less sodium and fewer harmful signals in the heart. Also, an important thing to note is that animal studies do not always reliably predict human outcomes, but nevertheless, they are a great way to gain a general understanding of biological processes and for developing potential treatments. All right, well, anyways, it seems like what we've gotten from all this is that salt is bad and we need to eat as little as possible to stay healthy, right? Well, not necessarily. This large international prospective study from the New England Journal of Medicine followed over 100,000 adults from 17 different countries to explore how sodium and potassium intake affects heart health and mortality. Sodium and potassium intake were estimated using morning urine samples. Over a follow-up period of about 3.7 years, researchers tracked deaths and major cardiovascular events like heart attacks and strokes. And they actually found a J-shaped relationship. People who consumed 3 to 6 grams of sodium per day had the lowest risk of death and cardiovascular events, meaning that both a high sodium intake of over 7 grams per day and a very low intake of under 3 grams per day were linked to increased risk of disease. This risk was especially elevated in people with hypertension. Higher potassium intake, on the other hand, was consistently associated with lower risk of death and heart disease. This study is important because it challenges the idea that the lower the sodium, the better. And it turns out it's not just about lowering sodium, but also increasing potassium to help counteract sodium's effects. The emphasis should be the need for balance, not extremes. All right, so what can you do going forward to decrease the risk of hypertension? Well, one, read some food labels to get an idea of your actual sodium intake. For reference, the goal is to keep the daily value under 20% per serving. That should give you a good idea of what can be classified as a high sodium food. Second, cook more at home. When you cook, you can actually control what gets put into your food, for the most part at least. And restaurants can add a crazy amount of hidden salt in just a single meal. Another thing you can do is to eat high potassium foods to maintain that healthy balance between sodium and potassium. Some delicious choices include bananas, potatoes, and avocados. And finally, you don't have to lose that flavor component. You can just replace it with other spices and herbs such as chili powder, garlic powder, black pepper, and cilantro. In conclusion, sodium is great, but so is a healthy heart. Be mindful, balance your diet, and give your heart the love it deserves. Everything in moderation. That's all. Thanks so much for watching.